This is Action News Jack's continuing coverage of the miracle on the St. Johns River.
And you're looking live at the Miami Air Boeing 737 that slid off a runway at NAS Jax. What a sight. Sky Action News Jax helps to show just how far into the St. Johns River that charter plane landed late last night. All 143 people on board survived, and rescue crews quickly got the passengers and crew off the plane and into this hangar. They were soaking wet, but otherwise okay. Now, we just talked to a passenger who told us things got real when that water rushed inside the plane.
At the moment we felt water, it was chaos.
22 people, including 3 children, were taken to hospitals, mainly as a precaution. And when you look at pictures of the crash landing, it's hard to believe that no one was seriously hurt.
Now tonight, important clues are starting to emerge. Late this afternoon, the NTSB showed off the plane's flight data recorder. Investigators want to know what went wrong on this stretch of runway. They're looking into the conditions of the plane, the runway, the experience of the pilots, and the weather at the time of the landing. This is Action News Jax at 6. Miracle on the St. Johns River. I'm John Bachman.
I'm Tanika Hughes. Right now, the NTSB is trying to figure out how they are going to get that plane out of the river. And tonight, Action News Jax has a team of investigators looking into what went wrong and what put the lives of the passengers and crew in jeopardy. Now, a lot has happened today, so let's get you caught up. The NTSB has a GO team on the ground in Jacksonville. Less than an hour ago, they told us that the point of touchdown will be really important in this investigation. While the flight data recorder has been recovered, the cockpit voice recorder has not. 143 people on that flight from Naval Station Guantanamo Bay to NAS Jax last night when this happened. Team coverage starts now with Action News Jax Bridget Matter. And Bridget, passengers say some of the scariest moments came again when that water rushed in the cabin.
And one passenger described the water in the cabin falling from the ceiling, Tanika, and also having ankle-deep water inside the plane. This is a look at that plane now, close to 24 hours after it made that crash landing. It remains at NAS Jax. We are across the waterway, so we're having to zoom all the way in so you can see it. Tonight, passengers, they have the luxury of returning home to their families after an incident that could have been much worse. Friday night, a Boeing 737 skidded off the runway at NAS Jax into water. Miraculously, no one was seriously injured. Fewer than 12 hours later, in daylight, Sky Action News Jax captured the plane sitting in water. It's an ordeal that could have been much worse. An ordeal passenger Darwin Silva survived.
Everybody kind of puzzled, looked at each other, just kind of like, why are we not slowing down?
The plane had left Guantanamo Bay for Jacksonville, 143 people on board, a mixture of military personnel and civilians.
The moment I felt the water, that's when I was really scared.
Silva was working a job at Gitmo. He describes the moments the plane went into water, a series of uncertain moments he won't soon forget.
It was chaos. I mean, I heard babies, I heard people screaming, I heard somebody yelling, women and children, I heard people saying we have kids.
These are the incredible images snapped by passengers and people working the crash landing, a 737 sitting in shallow water. The NTSB has a team of 16 investigating the reason the plane went off the runway. And several passengers, they described the feeling of the plane never slowing down upon landing. It's something that no one ever expects to be in, but a situation everyone should be prepared for. In Mandarin, Bridget Matter, CBS 47, Action News Jax.
Well, Bridget, you said it this afternoon. I tracked down Tyler Hall, a young father from Amarillo, Texas. He was on the plane with his father. They were at Guantanamo for contract work to build a playground. Hall described the landing, saying it felt like they came in too fast, hit hard, and then bounced.
It was almost like we were on ice. We hydroplaned, you could feel that, and you could start seeing some debris flying up after a bit, and I kind of looked up and thought, it's about to happen, and I braced. We never got a call to brace, but I braced.
Hall says it never felt like they slowed down.
Water came rushing in whenever we went from about probably 120 miles an hour to stop in every bit of a second and a half.
Hall wasn't hurt, but he took this picture of his father in the hospital with a gash over his eye. After all that, the two of them still made their scheduled flight at 6 o'clock this morning from Jacksonville International. They were still in hospital scrubs, but Hall did buy a Jacksonville t-shirt. He was eager to get home to see his pregnant wife and young son. All right, so I asked Hall if this experience has changed him. Here's his answer tonight at 10 and 11 on Action News Jax.
And I communicate with some of those passengers late last night over Twitter. In response to one of my tweets, a passenger with the handle Christopher said, "The scariest night of my life. Thank God for surviving this." And then, this is his tweet here. He tweeted this picture of the plane. You can see the door open and the partially inflated escape slide is still attached right here, right at the bottom of the door.
Tonight, Action News Jax is investigating how the plane slid off the runway into the St. Johns River. We do know that the plane was flying west to east as it landed on runway 10E at NAS Jax. You see that the Boeing 737 then continued another 1,200 feet beyond the runway and crashed into the water. Action News Jax investigator Ben Becker is live in Mandarin. Ben, you spoke to a former Navy pilot trained in safety. He says the numbers show this was probably caused by human error.
John, yeah, he wants to know why this pilot didn't pull up off the runway when he knew he was running out of time. Now, I want to show you over here. This is across the St. Johns River. This is a 10-mile drive from where we are right now, but as the crow flies, it's about 3 to 5 miles across the NAS Jax. Just a surreal sight. As you can see that plane sitting in the St. Johns River. But in all likelihood, the pilot tells me this was a case of human error. A military charter flight sitting still in troubled waters is raising troubling questions. Statistically speaking, it's likely this could have been human error.
It's more probable than not.
Justin Drash has flown P-8s out of NAS Jax and was an officer trained at the Naval School of Aviation Safety. The training consisted of being part of the mishap investigation team. He's now an attorney in Jacksonville.
About 85% of mishaps are attributable to human factors.
But there are other factors.
It could have been the water on the runway. It could have been pilot braking technique. It could have been a blown tire. It could have been a malfunction in the aircraft itself.
The Boeing 737 slid off the runway into the St. Johns River during heavy rain. Drash wonders why the pilot didn't try to pull up once he realized he was running out of runway. Drash says there are a lot of factors at play before the NTSB makes a ruling on what caused the incident, and it will take time. What should be the one thing that we don't assume in this whole thing?
I wouldn't assume anything. The only thing that you know is that there's an airplane that's sitting in the St. Johns River, and we're very fortunate that everybody walked away from it.
Now, the NTSB investigation will continue, but it says weather is a primary contributing factor in 23% of all aviation incidents. Reporting live in Mandarin, Ben Becker, CBS 47. Action News Jax.
Well, the runway that the charter jet skidded off of at NAS Jax was rebuilt in 2016 as part of a $52 million project. It included a cross-slope design that helps water run off of it.
But Action News Jax investigator Paige Kelton shows us another upgrade that could have also helped wasn't included because it wasn't required.
This is a look at the runway 10 at NAS Jax from the resurfacing project that started in 2015 and ended in 16. The section in red here is asphalt. In green, that's concrete. And here in blue, that's a 1,000-foot section that was added to extend this runway to be 8,000 feet. This is a photo of the end of the runway during that construction project. There was lighting that was added to this area, and this is where the plane skipped off into the St. Johns right here. This video was taken today from Sky Action News Jax. NAS Jax confirmed to me that the runway was not grooved during that resurfacing. So what does that mean? Grooving helps the water run off the runway, and it gives jets better traction. All commercial airport runways are grooved. Sources tell me that Navy pilots have long known that standing water can be a problem here at NAS Jax. Action News Jax aviation expert Wayne Ziskel tells me that standing water could have made a tough landing here even more challenging.
When you've just had a thunderstorm and water's possibly standing on the runway, that's a contaminated runway. And the runway length for stopping the airplane is completely different from a dry runway.
I've reached out to the two people who were in charge of that resurfacing project. It was a huge project, to ask why grooving wasn't a part of that multi-million-dollar plan. It's the weekend, so I'm hoping to hear back from them on Monday. Paige Kelton, CBS 47, Action News Jax.
The NTSB GO team started arriving at 11 o'clock this morning to begin their investigation. They have already removed the flight data recorder from that plane, as we mentioned, and other work is still taking place at the site. Action News Jax Brittany Donovan is live at NAS Jax. Brittany, you asked if the captain put out any distress calls leading up to the crash landing.
And the NTSB vice chairman tells me it's too early to tell if any distress calls went out before this crash landing. Right now, their 16-person team is taking a look at a variety of factors. But one thing that is slowing down the investigation is water. Now take a look. You can see in this photo those skid marks leading to the water. That's where the vice chairman says the plane impacted a low seawall made of stones and rock after overrunning the runway. Investigators were able to quickly recover that flight data recorder. The vice chairman says it will help them tell the exact speed, position of air controls, and the point of touchdown, among other data. Now, one thing they haven't been able to get their hands on, the cockpit voice recorder. It's underwater.
The cockpit voice recorder, which is the device that records the intra-cockpit conversation between the crew and also external transmissions with air traffic control, is another matter. That is in the tail of the aircraft and is currently underwater, and we cannot get to it until the aircraft is moved.
And a few other things we learned from the NTSB within the last hour. We know the plane was built in 2001, and they didn't have any notable incidents or accidents to tell us about besides one hard landing in 2005. Now we know investigators are working to interview crew members. They're in the process of setting up interviews with them. They're also working to figure out how they're going to get that plane out of the water. There's no timeline set on that. And one thing Action News Jax did ask about is the captain's experience, his background, his experience flying. We're told that's also part of the investigation. Reporting live at NAS Jax, Brittany Donovan, CBS 47, Action News Jax.
Action News Jax has been bringing you hourly updates on this breaking story all day. Our team of journalists are working behind the scenes to update our stories on Action News Jax app. You can find a gallery of pictures like this one of the folks getting off the plane, as well as more of the passengers, again, who survived the miracle on the St. John's.
And from the Action News Jax First Alert Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Garrett Beatonball. Well, we had some storms last night and a few showers today. We're tracking on First Alert Doppler HD, but also a storm system when you could see some more thunder and lightning in your neighborhood for parts of your weekend. That's coming up in the Action News Jax First Alert 7-day forecast.
Preparing for a crash landing into the water. An inside look at how Navy pilots train for the worst-case scenario.
Plus, the effort to rescue pets left on that plane. This is Action News Jax continuing coverage of the miracle on the St. John's. Stay with us.
This is a look from Sky Action News Jax at the Miami Air 737 that crashed in the St. Johns River last night. The next big project for the federal safety investigators from NTSB is getting this plane out of the water. Rescue boats from JFRD and JSO also on the scene just minutes later, working to get everyone off the plane safely. We did talk to a passenger who says that she couldn't tell where she was when that plane landed. So obviously a confusing and chaotic time for those people on the plane. We do know, again, all 143 people on board survived.
There were at least 3 family pets that were in the cargo area of the plane when the plane crashed into the river.
But they have not been able to access that cargo area just yet. Action News Jax Brittany Donovan joins us again live from NAS Jackson. Brittany, there's safety concerns, and that's what's preventing a rescue attempt.
And the commanding officer says those first responders checked for those pets several times. But after talking with him this evening, the outcome does not sound promising. Now we know there were at least 4 pets listed on the flight manifest. And when the survivors gathered in the hangar after their rescue, their pets were left behind in the wreckage. NAS Jax's commanding officer tells me as soon as all human passengers were accounted for, he had all those first responders also go check on the pets. He says they were in the cargo area of the plane. The rescuers didn't hear any noise coming from below, and they couldn't see the pets' crates. He says the conditions there were too dangerous for rescuers to be able to get inside.
I asked the first responders to go back and make an assessment, and they did. They went in, they could look in from the cargo bay door. We asked them to specifically look for pet carriers, and they could not see any pet carriers that were above the water.
And NAS Jax has said that they're not able to access that part of the plane until it's removed from the water, and we don't have a timeline for when that might happen. But the commanding officer says that the pets were a priority and that they've been in touch with those pet owners. Reporting live at NAS Jax, Brittany Donovan, CBS 47, Action News Jax.
We've kept Sky Action News Jax over the crash site for much of the day to give you live looks as much as we can of the work that's happening right now.
And we sent Action News Jax Courtney Cole out on a boat to bring us a different perspective on what's happening.
And right now, we're getting ready to give you the closest look we've been able to get of that Boeing 737 since it skidded off of the runway into the St. Johns River. I'm going to move out of the way here so that you can see, even right now, several hours after this happened, you can see that there are still authorities on the scene. You see the red and blue flashing lights here, and even an X here, which we believe is to let any other airplanes know that it is not safe to land here right now. Now, NTSB is on the scene, and they are investigating, and so you have barriers around the plane physically to keep any kind of oil or fuel from seeping out into the rest of the river, but there are also human barriers here. You have law enforcement on both sides of us, FWC and Coast Guard, making sure that no one gets too close. Reporting on the St. Johns River, Courtney Cole, CBS 47, Action News Jax.
Even before last night's crash, Action News Jax was tracking severe weather near NAS Jax.
Yeah, let's take a look at First Alert Doppler HD at 9:40 last night, the time the plane was making its landing approach, and there was a strong storm there with lightning, some wind, all in that area, along with that heavy rain. And meteorologist Garrett Bedenbaugh joins us now. Garrett, you were tracking that weather as it hit last night.
Yeah, Chief Meteorologist Mike Burrish on the air tracking that, and we were here monitoring and kind of showing you why this was a big thunderstorm going by NAS Jax. This is what First Alert Doppler HD looked like last night, taking a slice. We do that a lot during times of storms, right? This is going up 25, 30,000 feet up into the atmosphere, and it was building, and the lightning was increasing as well, showing a strengthening thunderstorm through the time period where that plane was making its landing there at NAS Jax. And the winds were out of the west-southwest right about the time of the landing, about 18 miles per hour is the report. The ceiling, the cloud base, was about 1,500 feet as well. So any time of the day right there at actionnewsjax.com.
Preparing for a hard landing in the water. An Action News Jax exclusive. We take you inside the training for Navy pilots.
And a live look from Sky Action News Jax right now. You're watching Action News Jax continuing coverage of the miracle on the St. Johns River. Sky Action News Jax showing the Miami Air 737 stuck in shallow water a few hundred feet beyond one of the runways there at NAS Jax. It's surrounded by booms to prevent any fuel from spreading into the river until they can get that plane out of the water. Everyone who works in aviation, whether it's commercial or military, goes through extensive training for situations like this one.
And the training is as close to the real thing as it gets. And for the Navy, sailors are put into simulators that mimic a real crash. And just last month, Action News Jax Lorena Inkland went through the training herself to show us what pilots go through.
It's one of the most mentally and physically demanding exercises I've ever been a part of. The Navy invited me to participate in swim survival training that every naval aviator must pass. I can tell you the experience was both terrifying and incredibly eye-opening. Before naval aviators can fly up here, they have to master survival skills down here. Action News Jax was the only local station invited to Naval Station Norfolk to see firsthand what it's like to train to be a naval aviator. These men and women go through grueling physical and mental preparations for the worst-case scenario. Their only goal? To survive. The Navy had me put on gear similar to what a pilot or crew member would wear, including heavy boots that weighed me down. Then it was off to the pool. We started slow, swimming from one side to the other. Then it got tough. Eventually, they strapped me into a chair, and what I learned next can mean the difference between life or death. The hardest part was keeping calm. Even though I was in a pool surrounded by experts, the thought of actually having to use these skills was overwhelming. Over the next few days, I'll be showing you the rest of that video, as well as a rare inside look at how the Navy functions and how it's evolving. In the newsroom, Lorena Inkland, CBS 47, Action News Jax.
All right, thank you very much for joining us on CBS 47 Action News Jax at 6.
And tonight at 11, you'll also hear from a survivor of the miracle on the Hudson about what's it like for the people who survived the crash.